Scott, I'll be your host. So today, you and again, this is track four. So we have Mr. Christopher Carr from Fort Bend ISD, Information Security Advisor. He's going to talk about insider threats K through 12. Chris is the Information Security Advisor for Fort Bend ISD, as I mentioned, overseeing security for a large school district with apparently zero budget dollars. He has held leadership roles in various organizations and is actively involved in advocating for K 12 funding. He holds multiple industry certifications and enjoys sharing insights with technology vendors and apparently asking for free things. So,
Thank,
welcome.
thank you. Appreciate it. Hopefully it won't be too loud. All right, I'll set the stage real quick. I have a cold, so I'm going to try real hard not to, cough too hard into the mic and stuff. Also, hopefully everybody's here for me and not because the sign out there said this is where the InfraGard session was. I am wearing the InfraGard shirt. I was manning the booth. There might be some confusion, but if you're here for K-12 Insider Threats, great. And if you're not, let me know before you go so we can take the pictures so it looks like I have a really full room before half of you get up and leave. Alrighty. So with that being said, what to expect today? I'm going to go through two kind of chunks of this, of the presentation. I'm calling it an intermission in between. It'll probably give me a chance to collect my breath and to have a sip of something to drink. So there will be an option midway for you to kind of sneak out if you need to just sneak out. I also like this. It's probably hard to see. It's an eye chart, but I loved taking this picture when I was on the plane. You'll notice that there's only three things that can occur on the plane. You take off, you have a meal, and you land. And they actually had to, and I'm sure this was lawyers, any lawyers in the room? They had to say, notice these things may not occur in this order. And I don't understand how when there's only three things, take off, meal, and land, that they might go in a different order. That would be a little confusing to me, but that is an actual true thing. So again, the two things that I'm going to cover really are insider threats in K-12 schools. AirDrop is a big thing for us. Hopefully you guys are all familiar with AirDrop. You may not have the same problems that we do with AirDrop, probably because you have a more mature user base than we do. We also have a big problem with filter avoidance, and we'll definitely talk about that as well. This is me, the imposter syndrome slides, that I do stuff and I know things, and so I'm sure this is going to be recorded and you'll have access to the slides, so if you're so interested. I started my career way back at Michigan State University in education. I was one of those people that knew how to remove viruses and malware from those 3.5-inch floppy disks, so we saved dissertations. That was kind of my job, and went everywhere through state of Michigan, worked for the U.S. House of Representatives. That's Hallway Con, if you want to come talk to me at all the horrors that you got to witness by working at the U.S. House. We were nonpartisan, but I got to watch all the fist fighting up close and personal. It's quite entertaining. And then more recently here in Houston, Memorial Hermann, and now with Fort Bend for about 9 years. This is me. I just found this picture recently. I thought this was fun. This was probably about 30 years ago, back when I stood up straight. And I could actually turn my head. I have ankylosing spondylitis, so I can't turn my head. That's probably why I should have also kind of mentioned that it'll be kind of weird when I do this the entire talk. But it was kind of fun. I mean, it was one of those things back in the day. This was the very beginning, right? This was when we were all excited, and Secure Michigan Initiative, this was an ASIO award-winning program. A whole bunch of us went through the CISSP program at the time, and we were really trying to build out security programs right from the beginning. And so I was really fortunate to do that, even though I went on and did network engineering and a lot of other things. I was fortunate to have that kind of as my formative base because it informed a lot of what I did. And so I became both a friend and a foe of every security team until I got back to full-time security, because I knew their language, I knew how the things worked, and I was the guy that was trying to build bridges and roads, and they were the guys that were trying to blow them up. This is kind of the information security landscape in K-12. We do track this. We do track, these are the breach tracking, right? If you got a dot there, you're in trouble. My only job is to make sure no dot shows up in the red circle. So that's what I'm kind of tasked with. And my job is twice as hard because, again, while you're here, insider threats. I have the attackers from the outside that you all know about. You see it in the news. You see when ransomware gangs and other folks target K-12 institutions. But I also have the problem that I have insider threats. I probably have the largest red team that I don't have to pay for of any organization in the Houston area. And parents don't like it when I say this, but running a K-12 organization is kind of like running a prison. You don't let the inmates go to the bathroom without an escort. We don't let the fourth graders go to the bathroom without an escort, right? We have a population who's constantly trying to break out, whose basically sole job in life, and sometimes, is to break out. They're 24/7 motivated. I actually go to bed at night, and so I have threats from the outside and threats from the inside. AirDrop is a big problem for us. Despite us telling anybody and everybody to turn AirDrop off, they love to use AirDrop. AirDrop's convenient and fun, but it has also been used a lot for cyberbullying. And let me, just by poll of hands, who here believes AirDrop is anonymous? Nobody. Good. Good, because our kiddos still think that AirDrop is anonymous, that you cannot figure out who's doing what with AirDrop. Now, it's hard, but it is not impossible. So we had basically what we suspected was a student drop something highly inappropriate to another student, and because it was so problematic, the family came to us and said, what can you do? And we normally would have said, hey, there's not a whole lot we can do, but we said, let's just see what we can do. We have some forensic tools. Let's see if we can maybe get to the bottom of this. So, and again, knowing that AirDrop is limited in geography, we assumed it was a fellow classmate or somebody on the campus that had dropped this image. We were able to, with the family, with the victim's help, take their device. One important thing if you're going to do an AirDrop investigation is you need to get that data pretty quickly. It's a lot of data, and it kind of gets overwritten pretty quickly. And so if you can get your hands on the receiving device, basically, and pull data, and don't worry, you don't have to take a lot of screenshots. I'm happy to share the deck. This is not our research, but we basically stood on the shoulders of others in order to figure this out. So again, we were highly motivated. We were not super skilled at this, but we said, let's give it a shot. Let's see what we can do to figure this out. So AirDrop cases, can range everything in K-12 from just, mischief or things of that nature, but they can also be more serious. One of the concerns we often have are things like threats of violence, maybe bomb threats, other types of things that could occur. And so we were trying to get, trying to get there. One of the things that we discovered in our investigation was airdropping, evidently in New York City, was also a rampant problem on the subways. And I, being an IT nerd, I like this, the UDP. We'll just say that the D is for datagram when it really isn't. You can see what's blacked out is much shorter than datagram. But it was interesting because this was what was happening, yes, pun intended. This was what was happening a lot, and some researchers said, hey, we understand that this is anonymous, but maybe it's not really anonymous. Maybe there's some way that we can work our way backwards and figure out the data. So we did a lot of research, and we stumbled across a lot of these articles, and we started running down the rabbit hole. And we found out that, yes, if you can get the data, go get it from SysDiagnose. You got to move quickly to do that. And they're not written automatically. The other interesting thing that we learned was you've got to take that device and you've got to issue commands to basically get the SysDiagnose data that you're going to need to figure it out. And so what you do is this. You basically hold the up, down. Now, the procedures may vary slightly, but for the most part, this is the procedures that you run. And if you run these procedures and it takes up to 5 minutes, you'll see that it'll generate these SysDiagnose files. It's a large file that'll be on your iOS device now that you can then extract. Ironically, you can AirDrop it to your computer. And then you can go ahead and run some analytics on it, right? So this is kind of where it is. I understand this is also how you win Angry Birds. But for the most part, this is how you generate the data. And then what we found was this was an application. Again, we didn't write it, but this was an application that they helped you to go ahead and analyze these very large data sets. To call it unstructured would be kind, but there's just a ton and heaps of data. And so if you kind of know what you're looking for, and in our case, we kind of knew what we were looking for, you could kind of zero in on, I'm looking for AirDrop type of data, I'm looking for this specific type of data. We knew the time frame that the victim had received it, so we kind of had some parameters we were going to zero in on. So we started processing the file, and we started getting some interesting hits, but then we learned that we could further narrow it down. Now, the two ways that you basically are registered in the system is you have phone numbers and you have like email addresses, right? Those are your IDs within the system. So we said, chances are if this is a kiddo and they're not using a burner phone, which they're probably not, because again, they probably believe that this was anonymous, let's go ahead and rule out, let's go ahead and start targeting just the or the area codes that are in the Houston area. And that immediately narrowed our search down further, because again, it's tons and tons of data. And so we got some interesting hits. And they're kind of blacked out here for privacy. But everybody likes to see a data output screen, so I obligatory put it into the slide deck. But basically, we got some really interesting hits. And then we went a little bit further and refined the data, and we found only one that pretty much matched the timestamp. And what's blacked out there, but you can see, is we got a phone number. So we were able to figure out who did it, which kind of blew them away and blew a lot of the folks away, which we thought was kind of a good win. Now, I'm not advocating that we can do this all the time, but just because of the egregious nature of what it was, we were willing to go through the efforts. But as a proof of concept, word spread, and we started having a lot less of reports of airdrop, because suddenly we're like, holy crap, they figured it out. How did they do that? And so we thought that was a pretty good use of our time. This, as I mentioned, we didn't do the work. We basically just followed, stood on the shoulders of others who had kind of figured this out. Again, you're welcome to the slide deck. It's probably going to be really hard to take pictures from way back there, but these are all the readings that you can do if you're so interested in how this process works. That said, there's intermission. I'll pause here for a second, take a sip. And I apologize, this one is also kind of hard to see, but if you can basically make out it's a restroom sign. And there's some really interesting stuff that they added. I thought the bottom where cyclists must dismount was interesting. I don't know who tries to go to the bathroom while still on their bike, or why that had to be added to the sign. The other thing that I thought was interesting was CCTV cameras in use, which I thought was also odd to have in a public bathroom. But again, you were warned, I suppose. So this was not in the US, by the way. But yes, my wife always says, what are you doing? And I said, I find these funny things, and I just have to take pictures of them. I'm like, these crack me up when this is clearly how stuff goes. Alrighty, filter avoidance. So filter avoidance is a problem in K-12. It's a problem everywhere, right? Basically, if you have security controls, any controls in place, and there are active workarounds, right? Whether tunneling type of technologies, VPNs, things of that nature. And so we have the problem because our kiddos are really not trying to, interact with nation state actors or anything knowingly. They're just trying to get to YouTube, right? They're just trying to get to game sites. They're just trying to do some of the things that kids want to have fun. Oh, darn you security people, you won't let us get to all the fun websites. And there's good reasons for that. And so very much there's a parallel, and hopefully you'll see this, not just in the K-12 environment, but obviously for all of your organizations to be on the lookout for this kind of stuff. And yes, we are required to filter internet. We accept federal money, and so we have both E-rate and SIPA requirements so that we're required to provide internet and filtered internet. And one of the things that, as we remind everybody all the time about this requirement in order to accept federal money to have filtered internet, is we always get the questions of, yeah, but you're trying to block or you're trying to knock out VPNs. Aren't VPNs good? I would suspect most of the people in the room are on a VPN now, probably because of the open Wi-Fi. But there is no expectation of privacy, and we have to remind folks of that, when they're in the K-12 space. The reason why these are hard, though, and I don't know if you guys will kind of talk about a few of these, but some of these are really, really interestingly written, and that they don't require any installation. They don't require support files. They're very portable. They're super evasive. And you might say, well, why would such a thing exist in a commercial setting? And you think about repressive regimes around the world. You think about folks that might be, say, behind the Great Firewall in China or any of these other places where they need to get out, report stories, do all this stuff, and they might be blocked. So there are legitimate reasons to have these super sophisticated, commercially off-the-shelf available, super evasive programs. Because they exist, our kiddos find them, right? And our kiddos want to use them. And they want to use them just to get to TikTok or any of the other things. Not realizing, of course, when they've tunneled through our defenses, then we can't see anything that's going on. We can't protect them. We can't protect the organization. We get parents who sometimes complain, my privacy type of stuff. What about privacy? And we say, look, this is different. Again, back to the whole, sorry, but we run a prison here. There is no expectation of privacy. If you didn't know that the guards read your email or read your mail and listen to your phone calls when you're in prison, that happens as well, right? And so the reality is we try to educate and say, please don't do anything sensitive, because we're going to try our best to kind of protect us. We're going to have to go ahead and watch everything that's going on. And that's the baseline here for how we were starting to figure some of this stuff out, is because, again, we were laying a lot of the groundwork, to be able to have this surveillance state, right? To be able to kind of monitor and see what was going on. So one of the other concerns that we have, and a more global concern, of course, with VPNs and whatnot, is maybe there's stuff that's coming with these programs and these tools, right? In the good old days, that if it's free, it's for me motto, when we were all younger and we were at college, and we would not pay for that gaming software or whatever we wanted because we found a Ware site that maybe had it available for free. Well, most of us in security know that those generally came with a lot of fun stuff that we didn't know was already there, right? And that happens to our network as well. We see a lot of times these students are downloading stuff, they're going to mirrors, we block all the normal sites so they find other sites, and a lot of times those other sites have stuff that's bundled with it. We've seen everything from malware, ransomware type of payloads that come along. We've seen crypto miners. We've seen any number of software that comes along with it that, again, is not intentional. It's not their plan, but the students are not obviously concerned with where they get the software or how they go about it. So one of the things that we started noticing, because we were doing full SSL decryption, is we started noticing a lot of command and control. We saw a lot of beacon traffic. We were starting to try to figure out, where's all this stuff coming from? Because it was coming from our computers, but we were finding nothing installed. And we were starting to say, well, this stuff all seems to be transient. It all seems to be in memory. It all seems to be things that are not on the file system, nothing that Defender's finding, none of the more traditional applications we're finding. And yet here was the traffic. We could definitely tell, based upon our layers of defense, and in this case our Palo Alto logs, that, hey, this is stuff that's not good traffic. This is stuff that's beaconing out, or attempting to beacon out, at least if Palo sees it and can stop it. So to get a handle on it, like I mentioned, it took us several years, but we fully rolled out SSL decryption across our entire enterprise. At the beginning, you heard that we ain't got no money. Well, it's free. So that's one of those things where we leverage the heck out of with the platforms that we have. We can have something like Palo Alto Firewall set because we can use bond money for that. So we can buy big, expensive appliance-y type of things. The bad news is that we usually buy those off of those 30-year bonds. And so I'm sure you guys are all cringing knowing your taxpayers' dollars it's a 30-year mortgage on a 7-year firewall, but that's something for another day. You can talk to your Congress people about that. We were also able to secure a proof of value with CrowdStrike. You'll probably see why later in the slides, but I harass vendors relentlessly. Are there any vendors in the room? It's okay, so that's kind of my MO, and you'll see the slides that come up later. But I was able to actually convince one guy, Parker, with CrowdStrike, and he bought in, and he said, yes, let's see what we can do with this tool. We were able to deploy it. I was not able to afford it, but he was such a nice guy that he let us have it. I stretched that 30-day demo into, let's just say, enough days where I think Parker was worried about his job. But the good news was, at the same time, unbeknownst to me, while we were really making headways and tackling the problem, our desktop, our teachers, everybody noticed. They noticed that we were stopping all the things that were occurring for the first time. And they came out of the woodwork and said, hey, what can we do to get this back? We said, we don't have any money. And then we were able, though, fortunately we had a grant for laptops, this one-to-one program. We were able to bundle CrowdStrike in. So we were able to bundle in like 5 years in with this laptop purchase. And I say that because of the layers of defense. Now I know CrowdStrike is a 4-letter word for some folks and the BSODs and all that. Fortunately, we only lost 1/3 of our servers during that nightmare scenario. But, yes, only, but it was great because it was that kind of last line of defense. So everything else, we had full visibility, we had our firewall doing what our firewall needed to do, but yet we were still not able to stop these applications. And I know some folks have even said to us, why don't you whitelist things? And I just chuckle, because I go, you haven't clearly worked in K-12 and how often applications change on a whim, testing applications. How many testing applications I have that say, to stop the students from cheating on this test, we need to have full administrative rights over the machine, right? And you're like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't want anybody to have that level of rights. And yet, to install and run, and the student is running in that context, which just scares the hell out of me. But that's a whole nother story. So again, we were doing all the right things. We felt we had malicious domain blocking and reporting free to go ahead and filter DNS. We were stopping Siphon. Have you guys heard of Siphon? Siphon 3? Okay. You should know about Siphon 3. You should go find it, download it, and see if you can get out of your network with Siphon 3 because it's scary stuff. We found various categories in various places now with our SSL decryption where now we could see the full URLs and we could see what they were doing. And so we could see and stop in a variety of places. It wasn't, though, until we got a little bit more sophisticated and we got CrowdStrike that we could go deeper, right? I just included this here. This is my firewall engineer, David. He sent me an IM that he said, look at what they're researching. If you can't see it, it's basically Palo Alto Networks, general topics, block Siphon 3. So they were on the Palo Alto website trying to figure out how Palo Alto was trying to block the software that they were trying to use so they could maybe find their way around it. It was very impressive. Again, we'll call it research. I mean, you know. So one of the things that we were able to then do was start collecting and storing hashes in CrowdStrike so that we could stop it, right? So that we could stop the execution. Because our kiddos are smart. They would rename the files, they would do this, they would do that, and you'll see it. But the only way we could stop it was to start collecting the hashes and start having CrowdStrike trigger on the hashes. Because again, it doesn't require an install. Our kiddos could pull it from email, they could pull it from thumb drives, they could pull it from any number of sources, including all the mirrors and other things that were out there. And so again, just simply having the executable meant that they could run it. This was educationstuff.exe. Well, it's not. But, you know, A is for effort for our kiddos, right? Here's one down here. This is Chrome. They decided to call it Chrome EXE. So they were trying any and every way, but again, the hashes don't change, right? The downside that we found is that Siphon permutates. They just kept cranking out version after version. So we're already at 1,200 hashes, and this has only been basically a little over a year that we've been tracking this. So every time we detect one, every time we find a new one, we have to add it. So it's whack-a-mole. We're not able to fully stop it, I would say, but we are able to frustrate them enough that a lot of them give up, which is good. This is an eye chart, so I'm going to go ahead and blow it up for you. This one we really liked. When that one wasn't working, they decided to try any and every. This is one student, mind you. So they tried, you know, Nflix VPN. They tried Avast. They tried DuckDuckGo. They tried ExpressVPN, all the way down here to OpenVPN, Proton VPN, and even stuck in there, I see CyberGhost VPN. This was just a determined attempt. Now, if you work in threat, right, you've probably seen threat actors do the same thing, right? The whole live off the land, just pivot, try to find as many things as you can, see what will work. That's what we've got here, right? When we talk about the insider threats, I talk about having a red team that's larger than most. This is a determined attacker who's literally trying anything and everything, including throwing the spaghetti, to try to break out of the network. We track. You may not have recognized this super sophisticated tracking system. It's called a SharePoint list because, again, we're rich and we have really, really, really good tools at the school district. But we started wanting to track it. And one of the interesting things, and this is only for maybe the education nerdy people in the room, was we have 80 campuses. It wasn't 80 campuses doing this. It was about 20 campuses. And in most school districts, a large school district like ours, you have feeder patterns. You have where the kids go to elementary school, and then they go to middle school, and they go to high school. And lo and behold, it was the same kids sharing the information with each other. We had a very few in the elementary, but we did have some elementary students trying this. A lot in middle school, a lot of high school. And you're probably going to be shocked when I tell you, siblings, right? Friends, friend groups, whenever we report this back to the campus, they all know each other. Hey, try this, this is how it works, right? And so we have a lot of attacks, but we would track this and we would report it back, right? Hoping that it would kind of slow it down. It doesn't really, unfortunately. Some of the kids get the message and some of them don't, which is unfortunate. Oh, let me go back one there. There's a lot of other things that we found in there too, gaming and whatnot. But the vast majority was we're just trying to get to the internet. It was just using filter avoidance type technologies to tunnel through our defenses and get out to the internet. This is a little bit of bonus stuff, but we discovered along the way. Just wanted to share it with you. So many moons ago, it still happens, but not as much because most of us are defending our DNS pretty well, right? Everybody's not letting people go just to the internet. There used to be a lot of data exfiltration that was done via DNS, right? Not as much anymore, but there used to be a lot of it, right? And you could see the telltale signs when you'd see all this payload kind of going out through DNS, and it was basically sneaking out chunks of data at a time. Well, we started wondering why we were seeing a very similar pattern, and we're kind of calling it UGA. We're calling it URL generating algorithms, because I think we're all probably hopefully familiar with domain generating algorithms, the kind of algorithms that the malware might use. The attacker knows which ones can generate. They just have to spin up one endpoint for maybe a day or a week, right? We were starting to see this. The problem was it was starting to overload our firewall. And if you're not watching for this stuff, you should be watching for this stuff. Here's a little more of an example of what it looks like. Whether or not this is legit traffic or not, we haven't been able to determine. In some cases, we think it might be somewhat legitimate traffic, but in some cases, we think it's just generating traffic to kind of overload. Now, I'm saying this is why is this important? Well, we started to notice this, and we could only see this because of, if you understand how SSL works, you can't see past the slash, right? You can't see beyond the domain if you're not decrypting. So now that we can decrypt, we could see a lot more of this behavior. And it was starting to make sense to us. We were trying to say, what is actually going on here? Oh, that's kind of the last slide, so I'll just talk about it here. Our concern level was this. You'll see all of the traffic is considered not resolved. In the Palo world, not resolved means it didn't get a determination back from the Cloud DB, right, from their database. You should hopefully all, this is best practice, and if you're not, go back and ask your firewall engineers. Hopefully you're all dropping that traffic. It may annoy your users, but if Palo doesn't know what it is and you're relying on Palo to tell you what the traffic is and it's telling you not resolved, definitely go ahead and I would recommend failing shut, right? Basically say, I'm willing to deal with a few. And we just basically added to our block pages because we were noticing that this was happening not just with garbage looking sites, but because of the overload that was occurring, we would occasionally see with google.com, we'd occasionally see not resolved happening elsewhere. And that scared us. We were already blocking it, but we said, thank goodness we're blocking it because if this traffic had slipped through, and that's what our concern level is now. So again, we don't have a lot of definitive here, but we don't know if if it's malware that's doing this, or if this is traffic tied to some of these super evasive tunneling that we're assuming that maybe what it's trying to do is overload our firewall so that it can slip a packet through to make that connection, right? So that's this next level that we're trying to run down with filter avoidance. All right, I'll pause there. Okay, there will be time, I think. How am I doing? We're good? 12 minutes, good, good, see? And you guys all thought because I had a cough drop, I wouldn't talk as much as I normally talk, but it's a good cough drop. All right, so this is the part where I harass the vendors. Do we have any vendors in the room? Yay, Joe, yeah, good, fantastic, okay. So, I don't know if you guys know this, but did you know Texas started Adopt a Highway? This is a Texas thing. If you've driven around, you see the whole Adopt a Highway and people can adopt and go and clean it up. That is a Texas invention. So what I'm proposing is Adopt a K-12. It's going to also be a Texas invention. And what I'm looking for here from you vendors is to adopt your local K-12s. Give them the products. I'm not talking about a little discount. I'm not talking about 2 or 3%. I'm talking about think about the kids. I'm going to pick on higher ed. Higher ed charges their kids to go to school. It's called tuition. We don't charge our kids to go to school. We are not prepared to make them make cookies and sell them on the corner so I can buy InfoSec tools. So I need the community to help me out. And again, I'm thinking that if some of you guys step up in the same way that back in the 90s and such, Cisco and Apple and Microsoft, they all started flooding the K-12s with their products to get evangelists and all these other things. It's a win-win. Help me keep the kids safe. We can help you introduce your products. I'd be happy to put your name up on the side of a school bus. I'd be happy to thank you at the next board meeting. Don't get left behind. Be the first one there. I'm looking at you guys. You could be the first ones there. That's where I want it to be, and this is a quote. I'm going to let one of you guys be the first ones to adopt, which is a few less steak dinners for oil and gas, and we could really do something here, folks. Right? So let's all rally. Let's all agree that energy sector and healthcare, they've all had a free ride long enough with all that Wagyu and red wine and all that stuff. So maybe a few less, right? Maybe take them to Popeyes once, just for us. That's yeah. Sorry, Mo. I know I'm cutting into your bread and butter there, but all right. Shameless plug here. We're having an event InfraGard tomorrow. We're doing a active shooter virtual, so you can go ahead and hit that QR code. That's an email to just take you to an email address for my InfraGard email, and I can get you signed up for that. It's TLP clear, so anybody can attend if you're so interested. And I think that is it. Yeah. Oh, this is just, you guys don't care about this. I always keep it in here in case I talk too fast. But this is, we're also seeing some weird stuff with Creative Cloud with the Adobe products. We're seeing a lot of weird URLs are going through. This is also the benefit once you start to do your own SSL decryption, because you're man in the middle and you can start to see a lot more stupid stuff going on in your network. But we don't know why some of these you can't see them there in iChart. I apologize. I think I was supposed to invert this and make it black. But we're basically seeing a lot of weird URLs, a lot of stuff that does not look like it's tied to anything that we do or any business, and so we're trying to figure that out as well. So, but I'll go back so you guys can take a screenshot. But again, it's pretty rampant, and we don't know what's causing it. We suspect if we weren't seeing it on the network, on the wire, nobody would know because it's just happening in the background. It's just traffic going to websites, and again, we can't quite figure out what it is, but we don't know if it's our kiddos. But in this case, we think it's just Adobe. So. All right, thank you. I am shut up here, and I will go back to that one if you guys want to do that. And questions, I guess. Yeah, questions. Sorry.
Thank you, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, much better. Thank you. That opened up my eyes. I'm glad I don't have K to 12 to 12 students anymore, but it still concerns me because this is our next generation. Now, do you? I have series of questions first.
Okay.
Do you have your own SOC?
Yes, me.
Oh, okay. So how far is the investigation that you do, and then whether to determine that if a students are doing all these efforts or some other threats?
Yeah, as you can imagine, I think in any organization, right, it's finding what you need to go after, and being a team of one. I mean, I really have David as my counterpart. He's my firewall engineer, but he's a network engineer, and so he has to sometimes go. I think they're called wireless access points and routers, and something called a switch. He has to deal with that stuff occasionally, right? And he can't just play with me on the firewall, and so he tries to, but he's the only other person, the pair of hands that I have. So I think in any organization, whether you have a team of 15 or a team of one, if you have more alerts, right, than you can possibly do, then you have to find a way to triage. And so to answer your question, I'm constantly trying to go after what are they doing and where are they going. I'll be honest, we don't have as many attacks occurring from the outside. We've really buttoned down our defenses as best as we can. We have a lot of alerts in place, so if we do see stuff, but for the most part, we've been able to kind of now reverse because we're worried about data exfiltration. We're worried about people stealing our data because, again, right now, it's become less and less of a problem in K-12. Ransomware still gets all the talk, but it's really the ransoming of your data. It's not to get it back anymore. It's the we're going to sell it or we're going to post it somewhere. So now it's less of a we have backups. You guys all probably have immutable backups and all that. We're less worried about that level of destruction. I'm now more focused on this, whether it's my kiddos or whether it's some bad actor. Yeah. I'm worried about what are all these data channels that look like covert data channels? What is this? What's going out? And so that's why, again, we pushed and pushed and pushed for full decryption so that I can say, if I don't know it and I don't know where it is, we drop it. And so we've been doing a little bit better there.
Are these student perpetrators, they're using school issued laptop or their own laptops?
It was both, but we see a lot less. Their personal laptops are not allowed onto the more internal network, and even the internal network is segregated. Okay. The students are kind of stuck on the BYOD, and it's a very limited set, and they just hairpin because, again, of the filters. Our student-issued devices, the ones that we issue to them, have the CrowdStrike on them, and they also have always-on VPN, so no matter where they are, they have to hairpin through us so I can see what they're up to. It doesn't mean they don't try to break them, and that's why we have to do all kinds of additional layers, like hardening the BIOS and all the other things, because our kiddos are pretty sharp. But at the end of the day, that's kind of the levels that we've tried to go to keep them safe. But yeah, it's really figuring out what it is. Attribution is hard, as you can imagine. That's why you're probably like, why did you show me a couple random slides of problems you have that you can't fix? Well, I was told you should do that because somebody in the room might be smart and might have seen this or might know. And even Michael Goff said that to me. He goes, go ahead and start sharing with people what you guys are finding. Maybe you'll have in your philanthropy dreams some other researcher, somebody who's willing to help you kind of get to pay dirt. So.
Hi there. Oh, God damn. Jesus Christ. I'm sorry, guys. Hi. This is a very sensitive mic. So sorry if you covered this, but do you get any or common instances of students like purposely trying to compromise the system or kind of test their security skills, just hack things, right? And then do you deal with that in any other way than just arresting them?
Good. No, good. That's very good.
It's not
yes.
a personal experience.
No. You're. No. That's. Yes, and I've got lots of fun stories, and I'll try to tell you one or two fun ones because I think they're fun. But my first goal, and I work with very closely with we have an in-house police department, and Officer Rios and I work very closely together, because you can never tell when something's going to go and become a felony, right? That there's sometimes a line gets crossed pretty quickly. I try to get to them when they're still basically redeemable. As Uncle Ben would say to Spider-Man, use your powers for good and not evil. And I try to do that. We have Cyber Patriot. If you haven't heard about Cyber Patriot, we try to steer these kids. Go do capture the flag. Go do all these other fun things that you can do. Work with us. We can get you kind of diversionary because I don't want you to have to. Now, two quick stories I'll tell you. One, we were very lucky because I go for free if it's for me. In 2018, I had Homeland Security come in. They don't do this anymore. But I was able to get Homeland Security to come to us because I was, you know that those games where you have to slap it real fast. And through InfraGard, they said, hey, Homeland Security is willing to do these threat hunts. They came out, and they were like, what the? They brought 8 people, and eventually they brought a 9th person, and they deployed FireEye, and they went crazy through our network in 2018. Long before I had any EPP. You know what was really unfortunate for some middle schoolers? Was that they happened to be trying the sticky keys exploit while we had FireEye deploy. We never would have caught them if they had done it 2 weeks before, if they had done it 3 weeks later. But during that 2-week engagement, three of our middle schoolers, we had to go have a chat with them. Because again, if you're familiar with sticky keys and what you're doing, you're up to no good if you're trying the sticky keys exploit. And FireEye was like, hey, you got some problems over here, right? I had another one, which I thought was kind of entertaining. They brought me in to talk to the parents and the family because they were trying to make sure that the kid could graduate with his class. And they didn't think he was being honest. And so he and I had a chit-chat, and you know how this goes. We're in IT, and our friends always accuse us of this, is when we start talking in binary to each other. I'm talking to the kid, he's talking to me, and I'm basically, after a couple minutes, calling BS on him. His parents are in the room. And I said, no, what you're describing, that's a dropper. I said, we know all about the dropper and what you were doing. I said, we want to know about, basically, the exploit software you were trying to run. He looks at his dad, he looks at his mom, and he says, I'm not going to tell you that. So he got to go graduate without his class. He got to go to the alternate school. Whatever he was into was severe enough that he was willing to not graduate with his class of peers, not tell us what he was up to. Because again, that was the way. Come clean. You know, if you're honest with us, we know what you were doing, but if you come clean and you're honest with us with it, but so he made a choice. So you can see the spectrum of, we've got the kids that are just playing around, and we got kids that are really into some nonsense that is highly problematic. And so that's why all of our investigations, whenever the bad stuff comes, we try to look, from both angles and say, is this going to get over there? Is this going to become a felony? Is this going to be a problem for us? And you've seen in the news, even like Klein had a denial of service attack, and some of the other students get to really, it's no longer fun in games when you're basically disrupting testing and things of that nature.
Going back to the airdrop example, I thought that was pretty interesting how you kind of reversed that. But my question, I guess, 2-part. From what I understood, the only attribution to the phone number to the actual event was there was a log entry that said an event occurred related to this phone number at the same time that the airdrop occurred.
It was the phone number of the other device. The student's device they gave us basically had a different phone number. It had 4 phone numbers, but only one matched the timestamp. So we were able to take that phone number and pretty quickly go ahead and figure out who it was.
So
instead of going in the dark, we were basically able to, call the number.
Okay, that was my question, is how did you determine that the
Yeah,
number was
they're not too
attributed to.
bright. There was we actually had it was kind of funny. They had one of the dispatchers call and fake like it was some sort of giveaway, and they gave us all their information because of course they wanted whatever it was, and we're sitting there laughing, you know, trying to be like trying to hold it together because we're like, wow, you just get a random call. Now again, I'm the generation we don't answer my phone. I don't answer my phone. It goes to voicemail. If I don't know the number, I don't. That generation, I don't know what's going on. They answer every random call they get from every random text they get from so we were kind of floored. We said, let's just try it, and yeah, it was pretty hilarious, but also a little embarrassing.
Does Fort Bend ISD have any program in place that's specialized for helping, young, creative minds that want to do, threat intel, they want to do hacking, anything like that?
I would love to. It's been embarrassing that I've been a de facto face of K-12 cyber for 9 years, and we still don't have any programs. You can twinge a little bit of my bitter in that. There are some schools and campuses. HISD has a great program, and they even teach. Her name is escaping me at the moment, but they even teach the kids how to do the steganography, right? So that they even teach them how to obviously embed data and pictures and all that kind of stuff. So they have a pretty cool program over there. We don't. We had a very limited program, but as you can imagine, it's kind of hard to spin up a new program without teachers and the motivation. I do know that we're getting excited because I think over in San Antonio, they're doing some good stuff. They're writing curriculum, and this is a lot of San Antonio gets fed by the Air Force and the Cyber Patriot and all those kind of things. And so they're kind of building that pipeline, and that's been an important thing in K-12 for us as well as how do we build that pipeline? We talk as a community all the time, but we don't have enough qualified people, and I'm like, hey, I'd love to help if we can only get some help. So again, back to the philanthropy thing, if you guys can donate products and services, I mean, can you imagine that if some vendor in here said, yeah, we want to go ahead and help support it out, get those programs going, then you're dumping in zealots who know your products and services into the community, right? Into programs and organizations. These young ladies and young men go off to various companies and they start to tell them about products and things that they're familiar with and they're trained on. And like I said, if you look back in time, you'll see that Cisco, Microsoft, Apple, they weren't dumb when they started flooding the K-12 space with all their products and services decades ago. And now look at Cisco's dominance, Microsoft and Apple's, is they got in early on a lot of those kiddos and got kind of zealots as a result.
So about 10 years ago, I was one of those free red teamers for, I believe it was Klein ISD. And they ran Windows 7 at the time, and I remember reading all those exploits where you can press shift and you can open up command prompt. And luckily, back in the day, they never locked the bootloader, so I can open up Linux, and I was having all sorts of fun. So, one of the things that I would have liked to have done back in the day is just even at a senior level. So I'm gone from campus, and I'm no longer able to be fiddling around with the infrastructure, but just being reached out to and say, hey, if you want to come take a look at what we got, just not like an insider threat to record everything.
Responsible disclosure, right?
Okay.
No, I'm saying that you were saying you would have told people.
Right, yeah.
Responsibly disclose, yeah.
Just to see, how things work, and as you've made it this far, I mean,
yeah. Well, that's what we try to do too, right? We're trying to literally get to the kids that we detect this way. If they don't announce themselves, I go around and I do the career days, and you're going to be shocked when I tell you this. The two jobs they want is CISO and pen tester. That's the only things that I don't want. Audit. I don't want to talk about compliance and stuff. Can you go forward? Let's talk about those cool hacker people, and I want to be the boss, right? But yes, we try to find them that way. I will tell you this is another fun story. When I got to the district, we were not letting our kiddos set their own passwords because we all thought that was going to be too hard. I don't know why. So their student IDs were numeric, and their passwords were numeric, and their passwords were a slope function derived from the user ID.
Oh, no.
And we teach that kind of math in our school. And for 2 years in a row, I could count on in the spring semester some kids saying to their teacher, hey, I can generate all the passwords. Just give me your student ID. I'll tell you what his password is. I say 2 years. You can sense my frustration because after year one, we should have fixed that, right? Wrong. So then spring came around again, and hey, here we got reports again. So we do have good kids. Don't get me wrong. When they find problems, we do have good kids that do report them. But a lot of the more nefarious stuff, they're not generally trying to come tell us, especially if it let them get to YouTube. If they can find a way to get to YouTube, we have a really sophisticated program where if a YouTube video is embedded in our learning management system, kids can watch it. Otherwise, YouTube is blocked. And they are very frustrated by that. But again, the beauty of, hey, if you can go ahead and SSL decrypt and see everything that's going on, you can do some really sophisticated rules in your firewall. What else? All right. This one here? Okay. You want me to stand in front of it and point us? We'll do that later. Okay.
Thank you, Chris. That's exactly right on time.
Oh,
So
perfect. Look at that. Nailed it. Hey, nobody go anywhere. We got to get a picture.